Hi, I'm Barbara Strong, and this is Bob Pendole, and this is California State Proposition 5. You'll see it on your ballot as allows local bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure with 55% voter approval. It is a legislative constitutional amendment. What question does Proposition 5 raise, Bob?
Well, Barbara, the question is, should the vote requirement for local governments to issue bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure projects be lowered from 2/3 to 55%?
How do local governments currently fund affordable housing and public infrastructure projects?
They typically issue general obligation bonds to pay for housing assistance programs and public infrastructure projects such as roads, hospitals, fire stations, water treatment facilities, and libraries.
What are general obligation bonds?
General obligation bonds allow local governments to borrow money and repay it with interest over time. These bonds must be approved by voters and are paid for by increased property taxes. Proposition 13 amended the state constitution to limit property taxes to 1% of assessed value, with certain exceptions, including bonds issued by school districts for construction or repair.
How are these bonds currently approved?
Well, before cities, towns, counties, and special districts can issue bonds to pay for affordable housing or public infrastructure projects, they must be approved by a two-thirds supermajority of voters. School district bonds, which require 55%, are the only exception.
What does Proposition 5 propose?
Prop 5 would amend the California Constitution to lower the vote requirement from two-thirds to 55% to approve general obligation bonds. These bonds would fund local housing assistance programs, including affordable housing construction and a wide variety of public infrastructure projects. It would allow local governments to assess property taxes above 1% to repay these bonds, adding this exception to the Prop 13 limit.
How is affordable housing defined?
Prop 5 defines affordable housing as developments that are affordable to households earning up to 150% of a county's median household income.
Will there be oversight?
Yes, the local jurisdiction would be required to conduct an annual audit to ensure that the funds are being spent as intended. The audits would be released to the public and submitted to the California State Auditor.
What would the fiscal impact be?
A lower voter approval requirement would likely result in more local general obligation bonds passing. This would increase the funding available for housing assistance and public infrastructure. The amount of increase would depend on decisions by local governments and the voters, and the cost would be paid for with higher property taxes.
What do supporters say about Proposition 5?
Supporters say California has a deficit of 2.5 million homes. Prop 5 can make California more affordable and ease this severe housing crisis. They say this is a public safety issue. Public safety specific bond measures have been supported by more than 55% of the voters, but they failed because they did not attain the two-thirds approval. They also say lowering the vote threshold to 55% creates parity with school districts and cities, counties, and special districts. School districts won voter approval for lower thresholds 2 decades ago.
And what do opponents say?
Opponents say Prop 5 undermines Proposition 13's check on local government's taxing authority and erodes property tax safeguards. They say Prop 5 opens the door for massive new tax hikes for property owners and increased rents for residential and commercial tenants. And they say the proposition language on public infrastructure is so vague that virtually anything can qualify.
Can you tell us about campaign financing, please?
Sure. 2.5 million has been contributed in support and 28.5 million has been donated in opposition. You can see the top contributors on your screen.
In closing, what does a yes vote and a no vote mean?
A yes vote means that the vote threshold to pass local bond measures for housing assistance and public infrastructure would be lowered to 55%. And a no vote means that the vote threshold would remain at two-thirds.
Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome, Barbara.